This girl's death is a mystery that has sparked anger in her community. Her body was found in a wooded area, but police say she didn't die there. She was placed there. And now 6 people are facing charges. None of them are charged with murder, which is raising even more questions about what happened.
I'll carry you.
Hello, God. Hi.
Authorities found when they searched the home where the victim lived. Dozens of animals in tough conditions without food or water. This is a story that has already taken so many twists and turns, including accusations that this woman was being victimized long before her death and nothing done about it. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Well, right now, the family and friends of a 24-year-old woman named Erica Bader are demanding answers. They say the warning signs were there, that this girl was in trouble, and no one did anything about it for months, until it was too late. Bader's body was found on October 27th in a wooded area of Pawtucket, Rhode Island. That's a small city on the border with Massachusetts. It's north of Providence. Now, it's unclear at this point how Bader died. That's still a mystery. But what made this story even more shocking is that police say, however she died, it didn't happen where her body was found. Someone moved her to that wooded area. Police say that Bader didn't live in Pawtucket. She lived in the town over in the community of Central Falls. Police say that she lived in this house in Central Falls on Central Street. She rented a place in this building. It has 3 units. She had one of them. Now, the police who entered the home as they were investigating, they were probably not expecting what they would allegedly find inside. Take a look at this.
I'll carry you.
Hello, God. Hi.
Inside the home, authorities found dozens of animals that were abandoned. In fact, it was 46 cats, 4 dogs. At least 2 of the cats are pregnant, according to the Rhode Island SPCA. And the conditions inside the home, according to the authorities that saved the animals, they say it was just squalor, atrocious conditions. These animals didn't have food or water. The home was in such tough shape, they actually say they had to wear masks because the smell was just so bad and toxic in the air as they were taking these animals out. It is unclear right now if these living conditions, if these animals have anything to do with the death of Erica Bader, but it's just another layer to this story. Police seem to think that at least 6 people know what happened to this 24-year-old girl, though. Let's talk about them. Here are their mugshots. Central Falls Police sent Law and Crime these pictures. Their names: Andrew Cornell, Elizabeth Durand, Christopher Kordelewski, Joshua Brunel Arnold, Stephanie Beltzer, and Brittany Turpinning. All of them are facing a charge of failure to report a death, but Turpinning, who actually was Bader's roommate, she's facing another charge, which is very important to talk about. Online court records show she is charged with domestic violence felony assault. In putting this story together, I typed in Brittany Turpinning's name into truthfinder.com, and we learned a lot of information about her from this public records search, including where you see that address of 382 Central Street in Central Falls, Rhode Island. That is where she reportedly lived at the time that Erica Bader died, where Erica Bader reportedly lived, and where all of those animals were found inside the house. Our partner Truthfinder is the powerful public records search service that we use to do research here at Law and Crime. It is such a useful resource. You plug in a name and you can get address information like I was just talking about, but also criminal history and much more. It can give you some peace of mind. It's one of the largest public records search services in the US. And with a paid subscription, you get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone, including looking up registered sex offenders in your area. So stay informed, stay safe, search public records with Truthfinder. Go to truthfinder.com/OTC. Now again, this isn't a murder case. Police and prosecutors have not said whether they know how Erica Bader died, but they seem to have evidence that shows that Turpinning should be charged with assault. Turpinning's bond was set at $100,000. Now, we are working to learn more about the suspects in this case. A big question, of course, is what evidence is there that they knew about Bader's death? We searched the names of all the suspects online. We don't know how they all know each other, but we do know at least 2 of them appear to have been married. Andrew Cornell and Stephanie Beltzer, they are married, according to Facebook. Here's a picture of them on social media. Now, it's unclear how they knew Erica Bader or if they knew Erica Bader. Family and friends of Erica, though, they have been incredibly loud and persistent since her death. They say that police were told over the last 6 months that Erica could be in trouble, but they are alleging that not enough was done to prevent her death. Now, according to WJAR-TV in Providence, Central Falls Police received 2 calls with concerns about Bader's well-being all the way back on April 6th of this year. 2 calls. Police say one of the calls was a family member of Erica Bader. Now, police told the TV station that the caller needed to file a missing persons report. They needed to come to the station, but that never happened. Now, the TV station also spoke to someone who says they're an ex-boyfriend of Erica Bader, and this is what they said, quote, "I would say about a week into when she was living there, she texted me off the bat like, quote, 'Can you help me?' I tried. It was kind of confusing. At one point, she hopped on a video call, started talking, and we could tell something was wrong." Now, that ex is one of several people, according to WJAR, who have said that they tried to bring their concerns over the last 6 months to police, but police say they only received the 2 calls related to Erica Bader, and those 2 calls came in on April 6th. Joining us now to talk more about this from Boston, so just right down the street from where all of this is playing out in Rhode Island, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Will Corman. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. This case, there's a lot of layers to it, but let's first start with the death investigation and the charges that the 6 people are facing. 5 of them are not reporting a death, and then you have the roommate, Brittany Turpinning, who is facing a domestic felony assault charge. What do you make of where we're at this point when it comes to figuring out what happened to Erica Bader?
I think the theory behind the failing to report a death is that these folks knew about the death and should have done something about it. In other words, maybe, and I do mean just maybe Turpinning caused the death, called her friends, these other 5 folks, and said, something has happened to Erica and I need your help or I need your assistance. But at a minimum, in order to even charge them, the state needed to show that they knew something about the death and should have done something as a result of it.
Because when it comes to that charge of knowing about a death, we see cases where someone is accused of abuse of a corpse as a charge where maybe they hit a body. As far as just knowing about a death, like how does what the bar is that a prosecutor would have to meet for this charge different than what it would be for an abuse of a corpse charge or something along those lines?
Well, every jurisdiction has some sort of statute that falls along those lines, and the names of them are all different. So I'm guessing, quite candidly, that the folks in Rhode Island are charging them with essentially what you're saying here, right? That they maybe even came into the room or were called to the house and then participated in moving the body, because as you said before, it's clear that the body was moved. It was discovered, a few miles away in another town, and I think law enforcement figured out pretty early on that the murder happened or the death occurred somewhere else. And my guess would be that those folks were there. Obviously, they know they were there. They know that they were involved at some peripheral level. And sometimes what law enforcement does is they charge everybody with this crime. They charge everybody with, failure to report, and then they sit back and wait and see who calls them first and says, I have additional information, and if you drop me from this charge, I'm willing to testify against whomever else.
And it seems like they've cast this wide net where you have 6 people who are facing charges. Police have not said much more than what they've already said, that the body was found. They went to this home. We obviously will talk about the animals that were found in that home in just a bit. But as far as the cause of death, that's still unknown. So it's unclear if this was just a blunt force trauma situation. Maybe it was an accidental overdose. Like, we don't know at this point. It's not a murder investigation yet, or we don't know if it will be. But what do you make of Brittany Turpinning? She is facing that charge of domestic felony assault, because that seems to suggest that prosecutors and police, something happened, and obviously this young woman passes away, but something happened, but it's still not a murder case. Why do you think that is?
Well, I suppose, we could hypothesize and come up with a whole bunch of different scenarios here. Perhaps Turpinning assaulted Bader, and as a result of that, Bader never got treatment for her injuries and succumbed to them down the road. Perhaps there was an injury that took place quite some time ago, and in investigating the case, they realized that there was a break in time between whatever Turpinning may have done to this young woman and a subsequent overdose death. It is a bit of a mystery, but as you said, the only clue we have is this felony charge against her roommate.
Yeah, and we'll see how that part of the case plays out. Now, the other part is, and I can't imagine police were expecting this when they go to this home in Central Falls, this address they say is tied to Erica Bader. They walk in the door, and it's one unit, and there's 50 animals in the unit. Really tough, and we see these cases, and they are incredibly sad. If Turpinning lived in that unit, how likely could it be that she would face an animal cruelty charge on top of it? Like, how could that factor into how the prosecution moves forward with this? Because as much as, I love animals, clearly Erica Bader's death is kind of the top priority in this case, but certainly the animals and what was there can't go unnoticed.
I completely agree with you. I don't know how folks aren't charged with animal cruelty based upon, even just the video and the pictures that I've seen of law enforcement in the unit taking pictures of literally dozens and dozens of cats. 50 cats, 46 cats?
45 to 50, yeah.
It's just unbelievable. And whether or not that ties in directly to what happened to Erica Bader is anyone's guess, but 50 cats in just about any small apartment or even a large apartment, probably should result in some sort of charges for the folks who are renting or the homeowners.
100%, because it's just it's an older looking home, and then there's 3 apartment units in it, and all the animals were in that one unit. So it's just kind of a bizarre twist in this story. And then the other layer on top of this as well is related to some of the concerns that people say they had about Erica Bader and her safety for several months. And people saying back in April that they were calling for a wellness check, that there were all these concerns about her. And then there's criticism in the community that police did not do enough, and maybe they dropped the ball. When someone's concerned about someone, and in this case, you have friends of Erica Bader who wanted a wellness check done. Typically, what can police do in a case like this?
Well, I think that candidly, if the police believe that there's someone who's in danger, I think it's incumbent upon them to actually take some action. And it doesn't sound as if they did here. Now, whether or not that would have stopped what happened later on, who knows? But the fact of the matter is that Bader's friends seem to have real concerns. And it doesn't sound as if they were imaginary concerns or they were vague concerns. They were real concerns about some sort of abusive relationship. And it doesn't seem as if law enforcement really did anything about it other than say, fill out a missing persons report or come to the police station. But it seems as if there were multiple individuals who reached out to multiple law enforcement officials and said, we have some concerns about this young woman. We have some concerns that she's being hurt or she's being abused, and we're asking you to do something about it. And it really doesn't appear that they did.
And from a civil side, and that's way down the road from where this case is, because all of this is still very much developing. But if her family hires a lawyer, what can you figure out when it comes to why more wasn't done inside? I'm sure you could have members of a city government saying we're going to do a full review, but how much transparency could you actually get as to why, if police really didn't do enough, that you can actually figure that out and why?
Well, I think we sort of have to start with where we are now and work backwards. If law enforcement during the course of their investigation, if it turns out that Ms. Bader had been, unfortunately, the victim of longstanding abuse, and they can show that through medical examiner reports or autopsy records or so on and so forth, then that's a far different issue than these vague notions of abuse or vague notions of her being in danger, which is just, it's different. It ends up being a different scenario. But again, if it turns out that there had been things going on for ages, especially around the time that her concerned family and friends were reaching out to the police department and basically begging them to get involved, then that changes the scope of things as far as their culpability is concerned from a civil standpoint.
When you have 6 people who are facing charges like in this one, and it's not, very serious charge. I mean, not reporting a death, especially in a case like this, is very concerning. As a prosecutor, how do you try to leverage in figuring out what happened and maybe building a case against Turpinning, since she is facing the most serious charge of all of them at this point? How do you go about gathering that information and then using it to build a case?
I mean, the fact of the matter is this, is there are so many co-defendants in this case that someone breaks. It's just the law of averages. Somebody, and again, I think they range in age from their 40s to their 20s, and one of these folks is going to reach out through an attorney or otherwise and basically say, I have information about exactly what happened, and if you drop the charges or if I'm guaranteed a lower sentence, I'm happy to cooperate and tell you everything I know. It happens in every case where there are multiple co-defendants, almost every case where there's multiple co-defendants. Someone is going to reach out to law enforcement, tap them on the shoulder and say, I have information that you want to hear.
What is it like as a prosecutor when you get that phone call that you've been waiting for? Because I'm sure you're, especially for people in Central Falls, the prosecutors who are doing this case out of Rhode Island, with the amount of attention that this case is getting, I'm sure they are very eager for someone to give them a call with that information.
You're absolutely right. I'm sure they're waiting for it. It would be a giant break in the case. But, these folks are professionals, and quite candidly, they know that phone call is coming. I think they'll be happy to have it. I think that, it will resolve a lot of unsolved issues. It will perhaps explain exactly what happened to this poor young woman. But I think that they're sitting back and fully anticipating that they get that call.
Then on the flip side of it, for criminal defense attorneys, where you have a client who's facing this serious charge and your job is to defend that client, and they may have information about Erica Bader and what happened. I mean, what are the internal conversations like where you're trying to do the best by your client, but at the same time, they are going to have to make that phone call and talk to police?
I think every defense attorney approaches that situation differently. We've all been in that situation before, and if my job is to advocate on behalf of my individual client, I very well could have a conversation with a client that says, look, this is your decision to make, but here's an off-ramp. Here is a way to make your personal situation better. I'm not saying you absolutely have to do it. I may not even be saying you should do it, but it's my job as an attorney to lay out all the potential options for my individual clients and basically say to them, it is in your best interest to figure out what we can do for your case. Don't worry about this other person's case. Don't worry about your friends. Don't worry about these co-defendants. You have to worry about you, because if you're not worrying about you, trust me, one of them is worrying about themselves. So again, everyone approaches it differently, but the fact of the matter is that it's my obligation to present the full panoply of opportunities to my clients.
And then let's just say one of these defendants, or in any case a defendant, they make the phone call that they want to start talking to police. Is that something where you as a defense attorney, you're in the room with that client as they're talking to the detectives or the prosecutors, whoever it may be? Like, what is that like compared to when we see the interrogation video where someone agrees to talk to police without a lawyer?
I would have a very difficult time imagining a scenario where I would have my client walk into a room, inculpate themselves. In other words, explain to the police officers why they know what they know without being there myself. I mean, again, if these 6 individuals are charged with failing to report a death, there's a reason they're charged. I mean, the officers know that these individual people have some information, and I can't envision a circumstance where I would say to my client, you know what, you go ahead and talk to law enforcement on your own, give me a call at the office when the conversation is over. It's just not something I would do.
No, and I can't imagine a client would be like, that went well. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much for that advice. I know that probably the next big development in this case will be the cause of death of Erica Bader when that comes out. I know you're in Massachusetts, different state clearly than Rhode Island, but what is the process of, okay, they have this body and getting the autopsy. And then once you get the autopsy, the prosecutor decides what the charge is going to be.
Sure. I mean, the autopsy and the medical examiner's report are going to be the key here. That will explain exactly what the cause of death was. It will explain to some extent when the death occurred, what else was going on. For example, were drugs involved? Was alcohol involved? Was it blunt force trauma? Was it strangulation? All those things matter. And then once that information is gathered, it enables law enforcement to make some specific decisions about who to charge him with what.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens next. A lot still to find out in this case, but it's just had a lot of layers of it, from the body being found in Pawtucket in the wooded area, moved from Central Falls, they say. You have all these animals inside the house, and then all these charges where it's still just such a mystery of what happened to this young girl. Obviously a very sad case in that sense as well. Will Corman, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, thank you for taking the time to be with us. I know this case, we're still learning a lot, but it's great to walk through it with you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
All the animals that were rescued from the house are being put up for adoption in Rhode Island. To find out how you can help or donate, head over to rispca.org. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.